For the next assignment, we're going to make a good old-fashioned ship's wheel, something looking very similar to this. So, first off, what we're going to do is we're going to create a sketch on the front plane. What we're going to do is import an image, and we're going to use that as a guide. So if we go to Tools, Sketch, Picture, we can then select the ship's wheel JPEG. Now that's going to come in somewhere, it's going to always be the bottom left hand corner. We want that in the center, so we just position that over the center. It doesn't have to be exact because, as I said, we're just using this as a guide. One way to get a little bit more accurate will be to put in some center lines, which is probably what I should have done in the first place. Let's have a vertical one. Reason for that is because if I just go back to the original sketch, or the original image, and the way of getting back to that is just by double clicking on it, and then the dialog box comes back. I want to rotate that so that it's, So the first thing we're going to do is import an image so that we can use that to create our ship's wheel. So this image might have been created from a sketch, or it's something that we've, an image that we've taken or we've downloaded from the internet. Doesn't really matter. We go to Tools, Sketch, Picture, and select the image. And what it always does is places the image on the origin, or the image, the bottom left hand side of the image on the origin. Now this, the orientation of the wheel is not exactly what we want. So what we need to do is we need to line the thing up. So what we're going to do is just rotate the image. So that looks about right like that. And then we're going to drag it so that the origin is over the center of the wheel. I'm just going to put in a vertical center line just to make sure that we've got the orientation right. And I'm thinking I might just rotate the image a little bit more. Now, to go from the drawing mode back to the image editing mode, just double click on the image. You'll see on the left hand side the sketch picture comes up, and I'm just going to rotate that a little bit more. That looks a little bit, maybe like that. The next thing I'm going to do is to make the image transparent. So if I go down the bottom here to where it says transparency, select full image, and I'm going to make that roughly 50%. It just makes it a little bit easier so that we can see the model as we're creating it. Now I'm going to exit out of that sketch, and I'm going to create a new sketch on the front plane. The only reason I'm creating an extra sketch is just simply that it's easier to hide the first sketch that has the image on it when it's a separate sketch. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the hub that forms the center of the wheel, and very simply that's made from two concentric circles. So I'm going to use my center circle tool to drag a circle that's approximately the right size. Just put some dimensions on that. It's probably 200. And then I'm going to have a circle in the center which forms the hole in the middle that the wheel sits on. So that's probably 40 diameter. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude this that drawing that I've just made. I'm going to extrude that out using the mid-plane command, and I'm going to make that, it's probably quite thick, about 60. So there we have it. Now the next thing we're going to do is to change the material so that it becomes a little bit more realistic and it looks like wood. So what we do is we go over to the Feature Manager tree where it says Material, right click on that and go to Edit Material, and you can see that there are a variety of materials to select. In this case we want to go for wood, and I think probably teak is the right material. Okay, so now you can see our little hub in the center has turned to a nice teak color. The next thing we're going to do is to create a sketch that's going to define our cutaway profile for the turning of one of these center handles, so spokes. So what we're going to do is create a sketch on the front plane, and very simply, okay, first thing we're going to do is create a center line vertically and another one horizontally. Now we're going to use the drawing to create this outside profile along here. There's probably a couple of ways of doing it. I think probably a spline is the best way. Now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to start exactly on the center line, because that creates a few little problems with the way that the cut rotate will go. So I'm just going to start just fractionally off the center line, and then extend this sketch. Like all splines, it really doesn't matter if it's not looking right at the moment, because it's very easy to change the shape of the spline afterwards. That's one of the beauties about this particular tool. So you can probably fiddle around with that as much as you want until you get it happy. I'm reasonably happy with that. I'm just going to have a look at this. I think that actually has snapped to the center line, so I'm just going to draw another line here and trim that off. Now what we need to do is make a closed profile, because you can't do a cut rotate with an open profile, and I'll just trim that. So now what I've done is I've created a second profile, cutting profile down here to cut out the lower part of that spoke. Now the reason why I've done this first when there's actually nothing there to cut is just simply because it's easier to see the profile. If I create a shape on there already, which is what I'm going to do next, it's not possible to see that. So I'm just going to leave the sketch. I'm just going to exit out of it. What I'm going to do next is create another sketch, again on the front plane. This time I'm going to use a center rectangle, and I'm just going to make a rectangle which is roughly the size of that spoke. So we're looking at 45 width and a height of 470 and an overall height from the origin of 550. Now I'm going to extrude that using the midplane at 45 so that we have a square profile, and that's the profile of the spoke. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go back to that sketch we just created, and we're going to do a revolved cut. So here we go, revolved cut. What it asks you for is the axis of revolution. Now we have a center line here, so we just select the center line for the axis of revolution, and it knows it uses those two little profiles to do the cutting, and there we have it. That's the cut profile. It looks very much like a turned piece of wood because it's created in exactly the same way. So once we have that, we need to have a few more spokes. So what we can do is to use the circular pattern command, and we're going to make a circular pattern based on these two features, the boss extrude and the cut revolve. Now make sure that when you look at the features to pattern, you've selected both of those, because otherwise if you only select the boss extrude, you won't have the turn profile. The second thing it asks you for is an axis of revolution. So this is the in the top box there. What it's looking for is something just to determine that central axis. You can put an axis through the center, but that's actually not necessary. What you can use is a cylindrical surface, because it knows that a cylindrical surface has an axis in the middle. It has to. In fact, it doesn't have to be cylindrical, it can be conical as well, but there's only one solution to that, so it knows that that's the center of rotation, the center of the circular pattern has to be through there. Now you've got a couple of options. You've got this equal spacing, so if you don't have an equal spacing, you can have the number of parts revolved next to each other based on an angle between them. But in this case, we want to have an equal spacing. Now, there are also 8 of these spokes, so that's what we want, and it's as simple as that. Now we have all the spokes. So the last thing we need to do is this outer ring, and for this I'm going to create a sketch on the right plane, and I'm going to have to guess at this a little bit because we don't have a view from that particular angle. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rectangle. It's actually a little bit complex. I'm going to create 2 rectangles, and then I'm going to put some fillets in the corners of this rectangle. So I'm just going to make those fillets like this. And then I'm just going to trim away everything that I don't need so that it will leave a continuous profile, continuous closed profile, which is what we need. Okay, so I think that's the cross-sectional area. I'll just put some dimensions on this to make it, keep it in place. So let's say 75 by 90 by 50. Again, I'm just these dimensions are just being guessed at because there's not anything really to base this on. If we'd had another image that was a cross-sectional image, we could have placed that on the sketch, on the plane that I'm sketching on at the moment. Okay, the last thing we need is something to dimension to show how far away from the origin it is. And the final thing we need is a center line to revolve around. So I'm just going to put in a horizontal center line. Probably should have done that in the first place, and I'll put in a vertical one as well. And then we can go to revolve boss base, and again it asks for an axis of revolution. Select the horizontal axis or the horizontal construction line, hit OK, and there we have it. Okay, so that's just about done. The last thing we're going to do is to hide the image because we don't want to have that scene. Although you can see now that you can see the benefits of having that transparent because you can see through it at the moment, but you can still see it. So let's just go to hide, and there you have it. That's the ship's wheel complete.